it's time for a two-part major comic book pickups haul. And these were all $1. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed that little intro, that little funny intro. And like I said, all these books were $1. You can see the picture right there. I'm going to probably post a video where I went in that shop between part 1 and part 2 that will come in a few weeks. But in part 1 here, you're going to see a lot of miscellaneous books and a lot of nice pickup stuff. And these were trade paperbacks. All these were $1 a piece. And the girl told me, her and her husband, that they had bought they was basically given these books by a collector. The collector didn't want these books anymore, which I'm like, really? And they're trying to find cheap comics. They're going to go to flea market and stuff. They're going to stock more back issues. They said they're going to try to grow their back issues comics-wise. And I was like, okay, well, as long as you're selling them for $1, I can rock and roll. And I went in there the first trip before work, and I was like in a hurry, and I went through, and she said, yeah, they're all $1. And I pulled out so many books, and I tested them, like, because these were some good keys that you'll see in part 2. And she's like, yeah, they're all $1. I was like, okay, we can rock and roll. So I went and got a few more, and then I went on to work, and then I come back days later and picked up some more issues I needed. So this is all together. So I picked up, to start this whole video off, I picked up JLA Earth 2 trade paperback by Grant Morrison and Frank Whiteley. And they had some Doom Patrol issues in there by Morrison, and I already had those issues. And they had a little bit of everything in there. And this one, to me, Whiteley is a very decent artist. He could draw some great stuff at times, but he also could draw Kyle Rayner looking like he needs to be on Dillamil.
He's fat!
That's just wild, man. That's just wild. And I sit there looking at that like, okay, that's freaky, man. It's freaky. Why, Grant? Why? Another trade paperback I got is from a controversial writer, and he had a lot of stuff by him in this. They had like a few issues of the Books of Magic series in there, and he had something else by him, but I didn't need it. And I picked up this trade paperback, and it is by the controversial writer Neil Gaiman. Books of Magic, the trade paperback. I think this is the first one. The introduction is by Roger Zaleski. This is one of those ones that, you know, it's really weird to sit there and think that this guy's going through a lot of controversy. And here I am finding this book, you know, I'm finding this trade paperback and some books by him in this section. Maybe the comic collector got disillusioned by the whole situation with Gaiman and decided to give away his collection. Who knows? But moving on, back in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, there used to be fanzines, and they used to be black and white, and they did stories and interviews with the comic book writers and artists and creators. Basically, we're just going to say creators. Well, one of the books that came out in the 80s was David Anthony Kraft's Comics Interview, and he would interview writers and do stories about, you know, about upcoming releases. And this was number 83 about Batman and Grendel, and it's black and white. This ran 150 issues. I have so many of these comics interviews, just with basically stories and, you know, things that was going on that I wanted at the time. Now, another one that I got, and this was, I couldn't find part 1 of this. And I think these were a trade paper. I think these were just like fine edition collections of the series that had come out. And I couldn't find it. This was volume 2 of The Crow. And this is Irony and Despair. And volume 3, Death. And I love the back issue drawings of these. There's the volume 3, Death one. There's the volume 2. I mean, these were just so nice, man. These were so nice to find And I'm like, okay, this was really unique, you know. I'm like, okay, these were really cool to find. Another one I found in the horror vein was from Clive Barker and Marvel and Epic Comics. It is Nightbreed 1 and Nightbreed 2. And I think I got Nightbreed 1 from Tom's shop, but I wanted to hedge my bets. I was like, I want to make sure I actually had these two. So these were kind of nice to get. These are nice. Now, staying in horror, I got 2 issues of Hellblazer that I needed. I knew I needed these issues. I've been collecting the series, and I'm trying to get that 300 issue run. And as comic book collectors, we could decide whether, okay, do we want runs of books? Do we want, you know, runs? Do we want just to follow the writer? Do we just want story arcs? It's up to us. And me, I've always been about trying to collect a library of books, like, you know, like with Hellblazer, all 300 issues. I would like to get that whole series one day, but I don't want to pay those crazy prices. And he had some decent Hellblazer there, but I already had them. This was issue 53 of Hellblazer. This is issue 54. Oh, 54 of Hellblazer. I do like the Batman Returns advertisement on the back. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's nice to show it off first, but yeah, 53 and 54. And this issue of Hellblazer was Hellblazer Special #1. And this actually was by Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon. I have no clue what this is about, but I went ahead and picked it up for $1. And I do like the ad on the back of it. Demolition Man. Oh, yeah. That's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. Staying in that horror vein, I should have showed these off. Staying in the horror vein, I should have showed this off after the Clive Barker Nightbreed issues, because I found Clive Barker, Son of Celluloid. I love that cover. And I was like, you know, that's a very cool cover. And I think this was adapted by Steve Niles. I thought this was really nice. I said, I'm going to have to go ahead and pick this one up. This looks cool. And, yeah, this is a nice issue. I wanted to make sure the camera got these issues really cool. Now, back to fanzines. One of the longest running ones was Amazing Heroes by Fantagraphics. And I have so many of the Amazing Heroes. I found them cheap at times, and I pick them up, and they're really worthwhile reads because they do news and stories. And this one is from April 1st of 1985. And all this collector had was this one issue of Amazing Heroes. I probably would have scanned through more if he had more, but he didn't have it. But this one has ElfQuest and Steve Ditko and John Byrne. Okay, Amazing Heroes number 8. I think this was 68 or 88. This has Ambush Bug on the cover. And on the back is the graphic novel Hard Times of American Flag. And this collects the original graphic novel. And by Howard Shakin. I don't know how you pronounce it. I'm bad with names, as you can tell. Yeah. Going into Marvel, I actually picked up this issue because they had 2 copies of #1. This collector who turned his collection in had 2 copies of this issue. And I went ahead and went with this one. It is the Ren and Stimpy show #1. And I have Beavis and Butthead. I have the whole series of Beavis and Butthead, I believe. So I went ahead and got Ren and Stimpy. And they had a big run of Ren and Stimpy. But I didn't do it. I know Ren and Stimpy was controversial at the time with John Kay. And I do like that first issue cover, man. It's how it's drawn, how the art pops on it. That's really unique. When you see it up close, you're like, man, that art is really something with how they made it stand out. Now, a big question I have about this collection is where this guy probably picked up the books, because she said it was a guy that had this collection and he just gave it away. And a lot of these books, I was going through them and I was like, man, some of these books look like books that I traded in at one time. And he had a run of The Invisibles. And I kind of regret trading that series in. I think I traded into Crit Hit at one time for store credit. I traded a bunch of books. I was trying to make room. And I remember I had the whole 24-issue run of it, and I traded it for a lot of store credit. And I hated getting rid of that first appearance, because I know The Invisibles were really a good one, but I think I got it back. It's Grant Morrison's The Invisibles #1. And I always liked the fact that on the back of it, of the Invisibles #1, was an ad for Natural Born Killers, which is really unique at the time because a very ultra violent movie, and then you got Natural Born Killers, and you got Woody Harrelson and Robert Downey Jr. and Tommy Lee Jones and Juliette Lewis. You got all these right there, and it's really unique to see that at a time in comics. I mean, the back issue ads for these movies are pretty cool at times to see on these. The toy ads at times. But staying with DC, back in the 80s, Ambush Bug was a popular character. His popularity was like Deadpool in a way. Well, DC really never took that next step with Ambush Bug. They never really pushed him into animation or anything. He was just a character that showed up as a villain. Fans liked him. He's like, you know what? Let's make him an anti-hero. Let's make him a quasi-good guy. Let's go that far with him. So he would show up and he would just drive Superman nuts because he meant well, but he was a goofball type character. And Keith Giffen really breathed life into that character. So I picked up this issue of Supergirl. I think this is 16. No, it is 16, and this was him with Ambush Bug, and him showing up there to hassle Supergirl. And on the back of it is a Power Lords toy ad. That's pretty cool. I give up Who's Who. That's pretty nice. I like that. And finally, I'm getting close to getting this first part done. I'm sorry it's taking so long. Back about a year or two ago, maybe longer, Corey had his shop, the Cult Shop. And I picked up the first 3 or 4 issues of this miniseries. And it was one of the very first big miniseries that came out back in the early 80s. And Frank Miller had done this one years before he did The Dark Knight. And I think he did this before he did Daredevil. It is Frank Miller's Ronin, number 6. I just need an issue or 2 of this to finish this run off. And I looked all around in those books for 4 and 5 of this, just in case. I looked all through those books and I could not find it. I just need those 2 issues to complete Ronin. And it kind of sucks that, I go into this shop and all of a sudden they had this 1 issue. I was like, okay, maybe he might have more. So I go through them all. I'm like, it just irks you, man. But, I'll find it eventually. Now, one of the, I think this was Charles Wood, or I think it's his name. He was a strip writer, newspaper strip writer. Well, Eclipse Comics had put out a 4-issue miniseries about his art. And I had to cover off one section because it's got a little nudity, So I have to cover it off with my hand. And this is World of Wood, number 4. World of Wood. And I looked inside, it's like a newspaper strips from back in the day, and I think this is what they was covering. This was basically reprints of his newspaper strips of this artist. And I thought it was kind of cool. I just picked that up for a cover buy. I thought that was kind of cool. The whole rendition of it, other than that one little nude spot, was pretty cool. So I went ahead and picked it up for $1. So that's the end of part 1. Part 1 is done. Part 2 will be coming to you in a few weeks. And that will be where you see the keys. And one of my favorite characters. Because I got a lot of that book. All these books. Thanks for watching. See you in a few weeks.